Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 389 of the podcast. And on this episode, I'm talking about the Kansas City Chiefs being challenged for the AFC West title. Since 2016, the Chiefs have taken home the AFC West divisional title every season, and for the first time in a while, their stronghold on the division is in question, and it's not just by one team, but by two, the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers. So part of this has to do with how well those teams are playing, but also the current state of the Kansas City Chiefs, who at their bye week have a 5-4 record with all of their losses at the hands of contending teams, the Chargers, the Eagles, Bills, and Jaguars. Despite this fact, quarterback Patrick Mahomes is himself having a stellar season, 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. The big reason why I wanted to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs on this episode of the podcast is because so many people still believe on this team and give them the benefit of the doubt because of their recent success. And I know that's how many of you feel about them, that by season's end, they will be the Kansas City Chiefs of old and win the division and make a run at a Super Bowl title because you've seen the Chiefs do it and you have not seen these other teams. That's really the cachet you get by winning in sports, is because we've seen you do it before, we're always going to believe you have the chance to do it again, especially when talking about one of the all-time greats in Patrick Mahomes. Because he's on the Chiefs, no matter what their record is, no matter what week of the NFL season is, you are going to look at him and that team and go, yeah, they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And yes, we can talk about all we want, how confident we are in the Kansas City Chiefs, but right now it all comes down to how confident are you in these other two teams in the AFC West. The Broncos have Sean Payton, a Super Bowl winning coach, and Bo Nix, who is a good, not great quarterback, and the Chargers, who have John Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, who many believe to be one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. The Denver Broncos have an 8-2 record, and the Chargers are 6-3. The Chargers weirdly feel like the same team every year. I mean, what's going on with Justin Herbert reminds me of what happened with Phillip Rivers. That team had some exciting moments, but you could never really take them seriously. They are a team that has to have playoff success for you to believe in them. A scary thought I have about the Chiefs is, have they gone to a point where they no longer need to be one of the best regular season teams, and that all they need is to make the playoffs? Whatever ends up happening, I do believe how this year ends will dictate the future of this dynasty. If they get to the Super Bowl, it will continue, obviously, but if they end up in third place in their division, drastic changes need to be made this offseason. I personally believe the team needs more firepower on offense, but it's hard to argue that when they are having success. The great modern dynasty in football was the New England Patriots, and that's a dynasty that had multiple acts. They had the early years of Tom Brady and the latter years of Tom Brady, and I'm really interested to see if the same thing happens here with Patrick Mahomes. Right now, it still feels like we are in Act 1 of this potential dynasty. They have Andy Reid, they have Patrick Mahomes, they have a lot of the same players, Travis Kelce. I want to see them go through some lean years and see if they can recover from that and see if Patrick Mahomes can win another few Super Bowls after having some down seasons as a team. One thing to keep track of is, how would Patrick Mahomes actually react if the Kansas City Chiefs are not successful this season? What if they miss the playoffs and he's not the guy putting up MVP numbers and they are no longer the team winning Super Bowls? I think then you could see him possibly be frustrated because he's out here looking at these other guys who are putting up these numbers, winning MVPs, and making playoff runs. I'm talking about the Josh Allens, of course, possibly the Lamar Jacksons, the Justin Herberts. I and most people believe that Patrick Mahomes is now winning MVPs right now because the team is not built around him winning MVPs. They don't have monster wide receivers for him to throw the ball to. And one could say he's been willing to sacrifice his stats for the good of the team, for winning Super Bowl titles. But if that all goes away, how is he going to react? I mean, even if this year isn't really the end of this dynasty, we're nearing the end of something. Andy Reid's not going to be the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs for the next 10 years, and Travis Kelce is near the end of his Hall of Fame career. The real guy who's going to be here for a while is going to be Patrick Mahomes, and it's going to be fascinating to see his evolution as a quarterback when those two figures leave the team behind. During Tom Brady's entire tenure with the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick was his head coach. I don't think that's going to be the case with Patrick Mahomes. He's going to have another head coach at some point in his career. Most football fans absolutely want this dynasty to end. They are getting some of the exact same negative reaction that the Patriots were getting during their dynasty. You hear it all the time that the refs are favoring the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs have become super mainstream because of Travis Kelce's relationship and what's happened to him to turn him into a big-time media member as well. There are a lot of football fans hoping for the downfall of the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think they are enjoying this portion of the football season. On one hand, I am enjoying the Chiefs no longer being, right now anyway, the best team in all of football, but I'm also perplexed by what the team is actually doing. I don't think they've done enough the past few off seasons to help Patrick Mahomes fully take advantage of this run. And I know that's crazy to say because this is a team that has won multiple Super Bowls. But I really do think that the bad thing about becoming a dynasty is this idea that you don't think you need to make improvements during the offseason. I think if you're not getting any better as a team, then you're making a mistake. You need to do everything to try to get back to a Super Bowl. Not to mention the fact that you have these teams chasing you. The Denver Broncos want to get where you're at, and so do the LA Chargers. These teams are coming for you, so you need to do something in the offseason to make them take notice, and I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs did that at all. And it's the curse of having the best quarterback in the league in Patrick Mahomes. You just think that guy's going to get you there no matter what you put on the field around him, and in ways does him a disservice. And I saw it in New England when the Patriots had Tom Brady. They took advantage of the fact that he was Tom Brady. The Colts did it with Peyton Manning, and the Bills are doing it with Josh Allen. You think to yourselves, we don't need him to have a clear number one option because he's so good. I normally don't care about division winners in sports, but in football it's more important. The last wildcard team to win the Super Bowl is the Tampa Bay Bucks in 2020, the Tom Brady year. It's imperative the Chiefs win this division over the Broncos and Chargers if they want to get back to a Super Bowl. And as I record this podcast, it's hard to say they have a good chance of that. I mean, I don't think the Denver Broncos are going to fall off that much as the season goes on, and the same goes for the Chargers. So there is a realistic possibility that the Kansas City Chiefs finish third in their own division, and that is not something that I saw happening at the beginning of this NFL season, and still it may not happen at season's end, but it is definitely worth talking about right now. I look around the NFL and I don't think there is a clear number one team in the league, and that's why the Chiefs being 5-4 is so perplexing. Yes, the Buffalo Bills are really good. The New England Patriots are really good at this moment, but we don't look at those teams as head and shoulders the best in the league. And I believe that's one of the big reasons that so many people are being quiet about the current state of the Kansas City Chiefs, because they can't quit them because they don't believe in these other teams. No one wants to say the Buffalo Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. Nobody right now wants to say that a young Drake May is going to lead the Patriots to a Super Bowl title. But you know what you could say and not be called insane? That the Kansas City Chiefs, led by Patrick Mahomes, are going to win again. That is something that is plausible because, again, we've seen it happen before. Even though they are 5-4, people still believe in them more than these other teams. People still believe in them more than the Chargers and more than the Broncos. And they have definitely earned that. I'm just out here asking, when is it okay to jump ship and say they are no longer the dominant team in the NFL? And I'm seriously questioning what's going on here. I think 5-4 is a good place to go. Maybe they're just not it this year. Fully admitting there's a chance they win every single game from here on in and become the team we've seen them be for the past decade, because it can happen because of who's on their team, because it's Patrick Mahomes. I was listening to a sports radio host the other day talk about the fact that he believes the Chiefs and Eagles are going to both make it back to the Super Bowl, and that would be a bad thing for the NFL. And I totally agree with him, because it kind of feels like we're wasting our times watching these other teams have great regular seasons only for these two teams to eventually figure themselves out. I think if you asked most football fans if both the Chiefs and Eagles are going to miss the Super Bowl, they're going to say no. They're going to say one or both are going to make it back to the big game. And that's how you get back to, is this good for the sport type of discussions. I don't know the answer to that. Clearly people like that matchup. It's kind of becoming a rivalry. But then again, how much talk of the Kelceys can you really take in 1 week? This all goes back to, you can't count out the Kansas City Chiefs until you see them lose for a final time this season. People will continue to believe in them, Andy Reid, and Patrick Mahomes until they either miss the playoffs or lose in the postseason. And it all comes back to who their quarterback is. The Baltimore Ravens are not having a very good regular season, yet I'm hearing people say they could still win their division. And why do they feel that way? Because the Baltimore Ravens have Lamar Jackson. The Kansas City Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and that goes a long way. This is still a league all about the quarterback position. The overall consensus is we don't want to see the Eagles win another Super Bowl. Who this year do people want to see win the big one? I think the Lions are up there because of the last few years with Jared Goff. That's a team that people want to see win. I think the Buccaneers, everyone is loving on Baker Mayfield lately. If we go back to talking about who people want to see win the AFC West, then I believe the answer is the LA Chargers, because there are so many football fans waiting for Justin Herbert to emerge as a top 5 quarterback. Over the last few seasons, he's been in that top 10 area. I believe if he won a division and made an AFC title game, he would be in the definitive top 5. It's always good for the league when another quarterback becomes a superstar, face of the league type of player, and that's why people are rooting for Justin Herbert. It does feel like in every sport nowadays we have the same conversations about whether or not dynasties are actually good for the sport. In basketball, we had it with the Warriors. In baseball, we're having it with the Dodgers. And in football, you're having it with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I think football has been built on dynasties. You had the 49ers, you had the Steelers, you had the Patriots, you had the Cowboys. Like it or not, it's a league built on dynasties, and you can make the same case for baseball with the Yankees and the basketball with the Celtics and Lakers. And with these teams, you just grow tired of seeing them win over and over again. And I think specifically when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, it has to do with their current style of play. It's not as flashy as it used to be. Patrick Mahomes was super fun to watch early on when he was throwing 50 touchdowns and making crazy throws. Now I feel like it's fair to say they're playing more conservatively than they were in the earlier days of Patrick Mahomes. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with him maturing as a player and the caliber of players around him. Personally, I'm at a point where I want to see Patrick Mahomes once again play with a true number one caliber wide receiver. I want to see him back in the MVP hunt and putting up ridiculous amounts of stats. Maybe this isn't fair of me to say, but over the last few seasons, they have not been a super entertaining product. But then again, I do believe it's kind of silly to complain about them when they're making the Super Bowl. That's why I'm doing it currently during a week where they have a 5-4 record. The Kansas City Chiefs are a franchise I want to see make a massive shakeup. I want to see them do something different. I think they're doing the same things over and over again because they have the winning formula. They have Andy Reid and they have Patrick Mahomes, but what happens when you have that and you're no longer winning? That's why I'm interested to see where they go from here. How is this season going to end for them? Because I think it's going to dictate how they move on from here. And I know it's only one season right now, but it's fair to say that the division is no longer going to be a given for them moving forward, that things are only going to become more difficult for them as Justin Herbert develops, possibly Bo Nix as well. These guys are going to get better. These teams are at the beginning of something, and right now it feels like the Kansas City Chiefs are nearing the end of something. The question is, are the Kansas City Chiefs going to pivot if the Denver Broncos and LA Chargers both end up with a better regular season record than them, or are they going to double down and just continue to be who they are and act like nothing's wrong with them? I don't really know if I'm rooting for them to figure it out this season or for them to fall apart and finish in third place. I just think they're going to be the most fascinating team down the stretch. Because of who they are, they will remain in the conversation of teams that are contending to win a Super Bowl. But when exactly does that change? What does their record have to be for most fans and media members to no longer believe in them as a team? I'll be brave for a second. I'll go on record and say this season, I do not believe the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl, nor do I believe they are even going to make it to Super Bowl Sunday. Now, would I like to take that even further and say they're not even going to make the playoffs? Not necessarily. I have a harder time believing that because I believe the AFC is kind of a mess right now. And I have too much respect for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes to say they're not even going to make the playoffs. But I do believe we're talking about a one and done type of playoff team when it comes to this version of the Kansas City Chiefs. And yes, there's a real chance that I am going to be unbelievably wrong when it comes to this prediction. There is a possibility of the Chiefs turning it around and once again emerging as the best team in all of football, winning another Super Bowl. I just think right now is the time to start paying attention to the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs are not in second place place in their own division. They're in third place behind both the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers. And there was no big move during the deadline to save their season, although there rarely is in football. Overall, when you're talking about this year's version of the Kansas City Chiefs, you're not talking about one of the best teams in football, and by season's end, you will not be talking about one of the best teams in football. I don't think they have it. You may think they have it because they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and that's fair. Because those guys are all-time greats and Hall of Famers, it's okay for you to believe in them. Right now, I'm just not a believer in what I've seen so far by this franchise. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I believe the dynasty is over. I just think this is a dynasty that needs to add something new to the equation. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So please rate, review, and subscribe.